The Sound.
The sound of where we live. And all the music you love. BBC Radio Bristol.
Thank you to Steve for the last 4 hours and to Diaspora for keeping you up to date with the travel. More travel to come in about an hour's time. And it is indeed your Sunday evening here on BBC Radio Bristol. We are back in effect with some amazing stories and a selection of music. We are celebrating hip-hop as well. Very shortly, in short, in a few minutes, we'll talk about the recent decision by the University of Chichester to suspend the only program that teaches the history of Africa and the African diaspora in the country. We'll get a response from the professor who led the course itself, Professor Hakim Adi. That is to come after this. Well, a decision to suspend the only university program that teaches the history of Africa and the African diaspora has sparked upset amongst many African academics, including here in Bristol. The Masters by Research, History of Africa and African Caribbean, African Diaspora, which is offered by the University of Chichester, was led by Professor Hakim Adi, a scholar who has dedicated his professional career and life to the African history and activism. I caught up with him earlier and he started by telling me why the course initially came about.
The course was established following a conference we held in 2015. It was called History Matters, and the conference was called to look into what was seen as the problem that very few young people, in particular African and Caribbean heritage, were engaging with history as an academic subject, whether that was in school or university, postgraduate students, school teachers. There were very few, and of course very few, black academic historians. So the conference discussed all this, what are the reasons for all that, and made various recommendations and so on. So one of the recommendations was to have a course which would be particularly maybe beneficial to mature students, that's, over the ages of 25, people who had a great interest in history, perhaps hadn't studied history as their first degree, but had an interest in history and wanted to essentially train to become historians and to carry out their own research, wanted to know how to do that. So the course was set up with that in mind, Masters by Research, meaning that a big component of the course is a research project that the students have to undertake.
And of course, the course is under threat because it's been suspended. Professor Hakim Adi wanted to explain the decision made by the university.
The University of Chichester are saying that technically what they're saying is that they have suspended recruitment to this course, including recruitment for this year. So the students who had enrolled on the course for September were, as I understand it, were written to and told that the course had closed, that they were then no longer able to take the course. So yes, so effectively it's being closed down, and the university is saying it hasn't recruited enough students, although it already had, at the time of its closure, it had, I think, 5 students enrolled for this year. And normally we would get enrollments throughout these months, so in June, in July, even in August, leading up to, even in September, actually, leading up to the autumn semester. So yes, that is the situation.
So is it right to believe that suspension doesn't actually mean the course will be taken off the curriculum? Is it possible that the university are looking at reviewing?
It means it's being closed. We recruit twice a year. We recruit in September and we recruit in January. So both of those enrollments are being closed. So the course is being closed for the foreseeable future. You're quite right that the university says that it's been suspended while pending a review of its marketability. However, I should point out that what is added to the problem is that they have now linked the future of my employment to that course. So they're now saying, because that particular course hasn't recruited enough students this year, as I've just explained, they have stopped the course recruiting any more students because it hasn't recruited sufficient students. Therefore, my post as Professor of the History of Africa and the African Diaspora is now at risk.
So what are you going to do? What are the steps you're going to take? I mean, dialogue with the university themselves to dissect
Yes, I'm waiting
the way
to hear
forward?
from the university. I'm sure, of course, I have to. I'm compelled as an employee of the university. I've been told that I have to, as I said, to come up with a plan for the survival of my post. Obviously, when the university have closed the particular course that I've spent time teaching on, it's difficult to see how that is going to materialize, what plan I can have to reinvent myself in some other way. But obviously I have to sit down with the representatives of the university, the trade union, and see what we can do. Unfortunately, as I say, we only have 2 weeks to come up with some solution. I haven't had any suggestions from the university. It's not as if the university is saying, well, why don't you teach this or why don't you teach that? The university are asking me to provide a solution to a situation which the university has created. I haven't created it. They've created this situation. They're asking me to find a solution to it, and that's rather difficult to do. But if the university are willing to think again and to discuss, well, we will see. I can't say more than that. Of course, I'm willing to sit down and discuss, but I think to say that it has to be done within 2 weeks is putting rather a lot of pressure on anybody.
Obviously, this is one we would like to keep an eye on and follow the outcome of this, Professor Hakim. And you come back and tell us what the outcomes and what this...
I certainly will. I'll be only too glad to.
The decisions are made after you've had a dialogue with the university. It'd be really nice to hear back from you. I'm going to say thank you. Good luck with, I think it's such an important resource for the African Caribbean community. It's the only one, like you said, and there should be other courses teaching this. I guess this is the importance of this. We often talk about the lack of African education within our educational systems at elementary, and, this is the only higher education one, which I certainly know about. And then we'll be sad to hear it discontinued, but hopefully, there might be some parts of it which can be redeemed from your conversation with the university, or maybe re-strategize and restructure the course. I don't know. I'm not in that field. So I wish you all the very best. And please, I'll be, giving you another phone call to find out what the outcomes are. I did send an email to try and get a response from the university, but I have not had anything as yet.
Okay. Can I just say that if people wish to sign the petition, they can go to change.org and search for my name. They can just look on my website, hakimadi.org, and they will see a link to the petition, or they can go to historymatters.online and then go to the blog on History Matters Online, and they can also find a link to the petition that we're sending, or that the students have compiled to send to the university, and they will also find details on social media, on Twitter and so on. But I would encourage everybody who is concerned about the history of Africa and the African diaspora and how it's taught in higher education to support us and to try and keep this course open, and to show the university that people think it's important and that they think this history is important. And hopefully with everybody's support, we can turn things around.
That's the voice of Professor Hakim Adi, who's the lead for the Masters by Research of History of African and the African Diaspora, talking about the upsets across African academics in the UK that the course is about to be axed. Thank you so much for speaking to me.